and has been on our minds over all these months. So I think everyone is curious to get your perspective on actually what is now the situation on the ground after the ceasefire, and how to make sure that this is a sustained ceasefire. What are the things that you think are being undertaken or should be undertaken to further address the situation and make sure this is sustained? Over to you.
Well, thank you very much for giving me this platform. And today, what we have witnessed in Gaza is, of course, nothing short of a catastrophe of a massive extent. And we can only detect the enormity of what happened in Gaza once we are in Gaza to really assess on the ground. So we're, of course, very elated with the ceasefire and certainly hope that the ceasefire brings something more sustainable in the future to end the suffering of the people, because we know that this war was nothing about except killing civilians and more civilians. And had the ceasefire taken place months ago, we believe that thousands of lives would have been spared. But at any rate, today we have a ceasefire. We need to ensure that that ceasefire is maintained. And there's a lot of responsibility on the international community to ensure that the ceasefire is maintained. Mm-hmm. And if we look at the trend and we look retroactively on what used to happen in the past, we know that with the Israelis, there is a lot of unpredictability, and it could go either way. Mm. So the international community has a role in ensuring that the articles in the agreement are maintained, they are respected, and that there is monitoring and accountability irrespective of who violates. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What we expect to happen in Gaza today is immediate relief and emergency efforts to help a traumatized people. Mm-hmm. These people have been traumatized not only for the last 15 months, but even before with the de-development in Gaza. These people were under a brutal siege for so many months, mm-hmm. and then compounded with the brutal aggression by the Israelis. The toll shouldered by these people is enormous. The number of people killed is unprecedented. The number of injured is also unprecedented. And they would need a lot of care, given that Gaza has almost nothing now. Everything in Gaza is ruined. If we speak about the infrastructure, it's not there. If we speak about roads, they're all destroyed. If we talk about the healthcare system, we know that the majority of the health facilities, the hospitals, are not operational. Water pipes, sewage, you name it. And people, after a ceasefire and after such a long time of awaiting a light at the end of the tunnel, they expect a lot. Yeah. And rightly so. They want their children in school. Children have not been in school for a year and a half. Yep. They need to cater to the needs of the injured. They need to eat.
And so is there, for us just to understand, what is the current access of those different organizations that would or could be providing that aid?
Well, today we have more trucks, 8 trucks going in, and they're increasing by the day. But is it sufficient? No, of course not, because the extent of need cannot be provided in a day or 2 or a week or a month. This would need concerted effort. It needs a lot of logistic support. It needs a lot of management. We have to ensure that the aid is reaching the people, all the people, not part of the people. And today, the Palestinian government has established a committee, and it will be working 24/7 to ensure that, and it has the different ministries represented in the committee to ensure that the needs are taken care of, at least to the extent possible. We need to understand that the challenges are enormous. And if anybody thinks that the Palestinian Authority can on its own provide everything, then, you know, it's quite naive. The Palestinian Authority is very ready to shoulder its responsibilities, but it needs to be fully supported. And fully supported how? It needs to be fully supported to have access to Gaza and empowered and enabled to enter Gaza and operate in Gaza.
And then, so the ceasefire is between Israel and Hamas. So obviously there is this quite a complicated relationship also between your government and Hamas. So how do you view that? You said that your government should be invested in doing more. How do you view that in light of the complicated relationship that I think we all know about between your government and Hamas?
As a person in government today, but also as a mother, as a regular Palestinian person, I think Gaza was severed from the entirety of the Palestinian occupied land. It's only natural today that it goes back to the core. And the core is today, whether we like it or not, the Palestinian Authority. And the authority has not left Gaza. In fact, during the war, many of the staff in health, in education, in water, in electricity were paid by the Palestinian Authority and were staff of the Palestinian Authority. So they have continued to work. It would be difficult, I mean, it would be challenging to mobilize everybody and be on their feet tomorrow. But it's doable. It's doable because once you have people already working, already in the system, it would be easier to mobilize them with some logistic support. And this is what we will be working on diligently. And
are you optimistic because the plan has, what, 3 stages?
Yeah, it has stages.
And so are you optimistic that really we can get there?
We have to stay optimistic because for us Palestinians, optimism is not a choice. It's not an option. It's a must. Because we cannot resort to helplessness and hopelessness. Okay, we have a deal. The deal has guarantors. It has to be. And we would like to move by the deal articles to ensure that first and foremost we cater to the needs of our people. These are our people and they need all the help we can provide. And we will not shy away from pressing and ensuring that we can provide them with whatever is possible at this specific time.
Maybe just for us, just still more granular vision of what's happening on the ground. So are there already convoys that are going in as we speak?
Yes.
And from which?
Yes, yes.
From which direction, so that we can imagine what is taking place?
There are convoys going in, and we see them increasing by the day. But as I said, it's not enough. We need maybe 10, 20, 50 times more than what is getting there. And we need to have plans on the logistic management issues to ensure that people are getting at least, you know, sustenance before we talk about something else.
And then, of course, we need to go through all these steps, and hopefully, as you said, this will be successful. I really hope so. Then when people talk about the reconstruction, obviously there is huge damage. In addition to the human suffering, there is huge damage. With your government, how do you see this taking place in the future? What is your message to the different international stakeholders and also regional stakeholders? How do you imagine this would be implemented? You mentioned the committee, for example.
I think my main message is that we are ready. Maybe we're not 100% ready, but we're doing our homework. And this has to be done with Palestinian hands, but with technical and financial assistance from the world at large. The destruction in Gaza cannot be shouldered by one entity. There's such a massive destruction and the extent of needs, the enormity of the needs will require a concerted effort from everybody, from international organizations, from various countries to chip in and come to the rescue of the people in Gaza. So we would start with relief efforts. You need to start feeding people. I mean, 90% of people are under famine.
Of course.
And the children with far-reaching effects. You can imagine the trauma under which these people are and the mental health issues and the mental health care that will be required by these people. These people expect to go back home. Mm-hmm. What home? Everything is destroyed. I mean, it will hit these people. It is one thing being under bombardment for 15 months, but it is another thing to see the reality on the ground the day after. And this is when it will also hit them very hard. And we need to be there, us and the international community and the world at large. The world at large that gave Israel the opportunity to continue with whatever it was doing for 15 months, and we all know that it was stoppable.
And Madam Minister, on the governance, future governance of Gaza, because it is linked to also then reconstruction, but also some of the relief efforts. What is your vision from your government? Obviously, there are all kinds of visions, but what is your vision? So for us to understand where you would like to take it as the Palestinian Authority.
Again, the Palestinian Authority has a vision on a reconstruction plan. There's a vision for one Palestine, but there's also a component, a big component on the reconstruction of Gaza. And it entails, you know, there are pillars for this vision in its entirety. And the pillars are, first of all, you need to unify the two parts. You need to unify them in practice. You need to unify them in administration, in operation. And we need to build our vision for Palestine and specifically in Gaza on principles of transparency, on principles of rule of order, on principles of one command, on principles of one law, one weapon, one line of communication, and so forth. And there is what is called the Gaza Reform and Rehabilitation Plan, Gaza Rehabilitation Plan. We already have it ready. And we have some strategic initiatives that apply to all of Palestine, but specifically will also take into consideration the needs in Gaza. Because if we talk about strategic initiatives, including renewable energy, agriculture, to ensure that we can feed the people, if we talk about education for all, if we talk about rehabilitating the healthcare system and ensuring we localize the healthcare services, then again that is important because all these initiatives will save us money. And it's important to save money because we also understand that it will require billions to reconstruct Gaza. So any saving in any direction is important.
Thank you. And you mentioned some of the reforms that your government and the Palestinian Authority is implementing across, as you said. Help us understand a little bit the situation in the West Bank as well. It is not an easy economic and social picture either.
Yes. Look, the situation on the West Bank is extremely volatile. It's a different kind of war in the West Bank because the Israeli policy is the same. The policy is that of, you know, taking land, displacing people, and calling that land your own, and ensuring that these people understand this is not their land, and they can move either voluntarily or they can be forced to move. This is the policy, and it has been exercised in Gaza for the last 15 months with this very brutal aggression. But on the West Bank, it's a different kind. The policy is the same, but different kind in terms of slowly pushing people outside, slowly grabbing land and more land. And we've seen it for the last 35 years. Land is grabbed, confiscated, and then more land is grabbed and confiscated. And today, the people in the government in Israel don't shy away from saying this. Before, maybe it was done, you know, discreetly. Today, they go out and put maps about taking more land, not only land on the West Bank, but beyond the West Bank, going to Jordan, parts of Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, reaching Saudi Arabia. So this impending and the looming annexation is a big threat. And it is enabled by the settlers and the unleashing of the settlers that suffocate our lives day in, day out. So the settler activities, the increasing annexation, being vocal about annexation, the poor economic conditions, our laborers have not had work for the last 15 months. We have about 250,000 laborers who used to work in Israel.
They cannot access Israel.
They can't access Israel. They have not had a penny going in their pockets for the last 15 months. And you can imagine all of this compounds the problem on the West Bank, let alone what is happening in East Jerusalem. The issue of prisoners. You know, in the last 15 months, the prisoners, the Palestinian prisoners detained in Israeli detention camps has doubled. So no matter how you look at it, it's quite problematic. But we count on international law. We count on our right, because I cannot be suffocated and I cannot be reprimanded when asking about my right. International law and the ICJ ruling and its approval at the UN says that this is an illegal occupation that needs to be dismantled in a year's time. Now, it might not be dismantled in a year's time, but we need to see steps moving forward towards its dismantlement. And this is the responsibility of the free world that says it's a free world and respects international law to move ahead with it. It's enshrined in international law. And if we, as a free world, accept annexation and breach of borders and grabbing more land in Palestine, then that's a breach of international law.
And Madam Minister, in terms of the economic picture, do you think that with now the ceasefire, because the situation economically and socially is worse than it was, let's say, 2 years ago. So are there any initiatives, particularly if there are stakeholders outside, be they governmental or private sector, particularly on the economy in the West Bank, that you would like to point to for the immediate future?
Despite the gloomy situation, and we've seen this in the past in Palestine, yet we remain hopeful because the economy can be revived. But to revive the economy, you need some political stability. You need to have access. You need to be able to move freely. So if there is a political track that will take us, a genuine political track with a time frame that will take us into that direction, then the economic issues will synchronize. But without a political track and a political direction, it will be problematic, because it's difficult to attract investors to such a volatile environment that is pushing investors out. But when investors see that there might be a glimpse of hope, then we will see people pouring into the area.
Thank you. Madam Minister, on the more geopolitical picture, so we have the new US administration. What do you think the new US administration and other stakeholders can do to, of course, hopefully continue with the upholding of the ceasefire and full implementation of the plan, but also then get us back on the path to peace?
Well, the US, Qatar, Egypt, they chaperone this, and other countries have worked diligently for us to reach a ceasefire. So being one of the mediators, we expect that the United States will monitor, and there are rules for the monitoring and the accountabilities in terms of any violations. So that's one. We also expect that the United States looks at us strategically and looks at us as people who are worthy of dignity and worthy of the rights as enshrined in international law. We have said it often that we are ready to live with our neighbors, Israel, and we have recognized Israel in peace and security. But for us to live with Israel in peace and security, Israel has to act as a normal state. We cannot live with Israel in peace and security when Israel every once in a while wages a war on our people in Gaza or people in the West Bank. Today what we're seeing happening on the West Bank is telling. Because now, you know, things are easing on the Gaza front, but they are intensifying on the West Bank front. And we hear statements from Israeli leaders saying that now it's the time we're turning to the West Bank. And what we did in Gaza, we're going to do in the West Bank. I think the United States needs to look at us differently. If President Trump wants to leave a legacy of peace, a sustainable peace, then peace can only be sustained if the rights of the Palestinians are respected.
Are you optimistic the message is getting through or will get through?
I think we have used whatever means, we have to use whatever means to get to the US administration. We have to keep the windows open. We have to ensure that there are people that whisper in the ears of President Trump, his close circle, on what the aspirations are and what true peace means. I mean, you can dictate a peace, call it a peace, but if it's not a true peace, it won't work.
And even in the US, and others, of course, keep mentioning the role of other countries in the region in a peaceful settlement in the future. How do you see the different roles of the countries that are involved, and what is your message to them right now in terms of what is required to get back on a more sustainable path?
I think the message is very clear for us as Palestinians. What we want is a path that will bring us to real peace that is sustainable and once for all. We're not for interim arrangements. We've experienced that in the past. What we want is just to be liberated. We've been under a belligerent occupation for quite long, and the ICJ ruling is very clear about it today. We have the Global Coalition for Peace, spearheaded by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Norway, and we have 90 countries that have rallied behind it. That's another important path. We're awaiting the peace conference to be held at the UN mid-year. We are awaiting a conference of the high contracting parties in March. So there are several activities or events taking place, all moving in the direction of peace. But again, we want what is called a true peace, not something that gives us a camouflage of what peace looks like, because people outside are dictating what that peace should look like, and peace that takes the interest of all parties, not one party on the account of the other. And to me, we need to be seen as people worthy of living, as people worthy of their land, as people who need to be given time to breathe so that they can show the region and the world what we can contribute. We have contributed in the past. We have a great history of contribution, but we need to be given the opportunity to do so.
And specifically on Saudi Arabia, How do you see their role? And can they be helpful also in, or anyone else in the region? There are all kinds of views on what kind of arrangements also in terms of security should be had in Gaza in the future.
Saudi Arabia is a very important and weighty country. Financially, it's very important amongst Islamic and Arab countries. So coming into the picture with force is very, very important. And voicing that it will not move on the normalization track until the Palestinian track and the two-state and the materialization of the state moves on, it gives us a lot of hope.
Madam Minister, finally, I mentioned that we had many stakeholders, many leaders that have engaged in dialogue on the situation in Gaza. Also, they have given views on pathways to peace. How can we restart a pathway to peace? We had here, as I said, among them also was from the region Israeli president who talked about Hamas's attack on October 7th and the human toll that it had. For us, of course, it's important, and it's very important we've had this conversation. I would like to understand from you, given the situation right now, you mentioned a two-state solution. How feasible is it? Many question it. How do you feel about it? How feasible you think it is, despite the challenges that we have right now?
First and foremost, we need to understand that peace is possible, and justice can prevail, but it needs teeth. It can't just be a slogan. The two-state solution is the only viable solution, despite all the difficulties. There are other options, there are other solutions. But the viability of those solutions, if we think that the two-state solution is not viable, the viability of the other solutions are even less. So the whole world, even the United States, says that the most viable solution is the two-state solution. The International Court of Justice said that, we need to move towards a two-state solution. The Global Alliance wants a two-state solution. The whole world wants a two-state solution. The only entity that doesn't want a two-state solution is the occupied state of Israel. The state of Israel needs to understand that its illusion on occupying people forever, demonizing them, brutalizing them, can pass with impunity. They need to re-question that, because today, after what has happened and the pains inflicted on Palestinians and the sufferings of the Palestinians for decades, this will bring us to another, maybe more vicious cycle of violence in the future if this issue is not solved, and solved in the nearest time possible. So the two-state parameters are there. What we need is a genuine path that takes us with a specific framework on the two states and a monitoring mechanism that puts the players into account.
Madam Minister, thank you. You at the beginning mentioned the word hope. I think it's very important. We are meeting here at a very sensitive time. I think hope is maybe something that is not on people's mind, because it's really just a small installment in terms of where we need to be. But I really hope that if we have this conversation in a year's time, that we will be in a completely different situation where some of the things we've discussed, maybe I will not be asking you about the feasibility of the two-state solution, or being very careful about even saying that maybe there are pathways to dialogue. I guess this is a testament of where we are right now, but to your point on hope, I do hope that we will now, this is the bottom, and we can go only upward from here. So thank you so much for sharing. Thank you so much for being here. All the best. Thank you.